Today is the 2nd of April 1982. Argentine military forces have launched an amphibious landing on the Falklands Islands, British territory. The Argentine forces were met with resistance from the elite Royal Marine garrison of the Falklands Islands, but the Royal Marines were outnumbered and soon the invaders surrounded Government House, the HQ and the residence of the British governor of the Falklands Islands. The British governor surrendered the islands. It was now occupied by Argentina, and from the 2nd of April till the 14th of June, the Falklands will be a scene of an undeclared war between Britain and Argentina. Before the Age of Discovery, the Falkland Islands were a group of uninhabited islands, but in 1690, a British expedition led by Captain John Strong discovered them and established a colony. The French followed suit, making a colony as well, but then the Spanish Empire forced the British and the French off the island in 1770. But in the early 19th century, the Spanish Empire collapsed into independent American nations. One of the nations, Argentina, inherited the island of the Falklands from Spain, although the British protested this, claiming it was theirs. But soon, the Argentine colony of the Falklands ended as it was destroyed by the USA after an American ship was captured by the Argentinians, who now previously ruled the Falklands. Britain now took the opportunity to regain the Falklands as the Royal Navy reasserted British control of the Falklands in 1833, and in 1840 it became a crown colony of Britain. In 1976, Argentina was erupted by a military coup, and a nationalist military government now ruled the country. It was deeply unpopular as it unsuccessfully tried to deal with its economic crisis, and it had repressed leftists and trade unions. The leader of the government, Leopoldo Galtieri, who was now president of Argentina, ordered an invasion of the Falklands to distract the people of Argentina who wanted the military government's overthrow. So on the 2nd of April 1982, the Falklands, which was in control of the British, was now occupied by Argentina. The Argentine people were happy at the news that their lost territory was now in their hands again. Even the leftists and the trade unions who opposed the military government now supported their decision to take the islands from British hands. The Argentine government thought that the British would just accept their loss and do a peace deal with Argentina, but they were wrong. When word of the invasion of the Falkland Islands by Argentina reached Britain, its people and the government of Britain, led by Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, were furious that such a thing could happen. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Lord Carrington, resigned in humiliation due to the fact that an invasion of British territory can happen under his watch. Britain had been plagued with more troubles before the invasion of the Falklands. The economy of Britain since the 1970s was struggling, and there was unrest in the country as a result of Margaret Thatcher's government. There was also conflict happening in the part of the country known as Northern Ireland between the British Armed Forces and paramilitary groups, most notably the Provisional IRA. This was affecting the country as terrorist attacks on British cities were committed by the IRA as a result of this. Next, Britain as a country was fading in international power since the end of World War II, with its colonies gaining independence, and by 1982 the large British Empire of the Victorian age had vanished, and the Argentine invasion of the Falklands was seen as a continuation of the decline of Britain, with an ABC News reporter saying,
It would appear the sun has set on yet another corner of the British Empire.
Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, although controversial, was a strong woman who will not be messed with, including with the Argentine government. When Margaret Thatcher was asked about the possibility of failure by a journalist if the British Armed Forces was to try and regain the islands, she responded with saying,
"I'm not talking about failure with the kind of fleet and the kind of people we have assembled. I'm talking very quietly about succeeding in a very quiet, I hope, British way."
Margaret Thatcher established a war cabinet and a task force was made to regain the Falklands for Britain. The British people supported Margaret Thatcher's decision to counter the Argentine occupation of the Falklands with military force, and people had a sense of patriotism for Britain again after the dark ages of post-war Britain. Even the Queen's son, Prince Andrew, joined the task force in their journey to regain the Falklands. The task force made to regain the Falklands set sail on the 4th of April. The task force numbered 127 ships, which 43 were Royal Naval vessels, 22 were Royal Fleet Auxiliary vessels, and 62 merchant vessels, including 2 aircraft carriers. Britain had 42 aircraft, whilst Argentina had 122 aircraft. This would be important to know as Argentina will have air superiority throughout the whole war. The British strategy in the war was to have complete naval and air superiority in the Falklands before the landing of British ground troops. An exclusion zone was set up around the Falklands, meaning any Argentine vessel were vulnerable to attack by British forces if it fell within the exclusion zone. The Argentine strategy was to counter this by surrounding the Royal Navy in the south and northwest waters around the Falkland Islands. British operations on the Falklands began on the 1st of May with Operation Black Buck, which was a raid on Argentine airfields. Next, the British submarine HMS Conqueror sank the Argentine ship General Belgrano, killing 323 of her crew. It became half of the fatalities suffered by the Argentine military throughout the whole war. As a result of this, Argentina cancelled their strategy of countering the Royal Navy, and the job of countering the Royal Navy was now given to the Argentine Air Force. As a result of this, Argentine planes sank the Royal Naval vessel HMS Sheffield with Exocet missiles. But soon the British task force regained the South Georgia Islands from Argentina. Prior to this action, it was occupied along with the rest of the Falklands as it was invaded by Argentine Marines who claimed to protect Argentine merchants. The British Army units of SBS and SAS scouted San Carlos, a town in the Falklands, to see if it would be good to land troops there. The Special Force units found there were no Argentine troops in San Carlos, making it a perfect place for a landing point of British ground forces. On the 8th of May, it was decided that San Carlos would be the landing point of British troops, but before it could happen, air superiority had to be achieved, as British ground troops were vulnerable to attack from the Argentine Air Force, so a raid on the Argentine airfields in Pebble Island by British Special Forces commenced. It was successful and the Argentine airfields were damaged. On the 21st of May, 4,000 men of the 3rd Commando Brigade of Royal Marines led by Julian Thompson landed on San Carlos. They were followed by 2 Para, 3 Para and the 45th Commando of Royal Marines. The Argentines, now hearing of this landing of British ground troops, would now attack British supplies to the ground forces of Britain to make the British forces in the Falklands have a difficult journey whilst regaining the islands. The lack of helicopters made the British troops in the Falklands have to march on the muddy ground, making some of the troops have trench foot. The British were also outnumbered, but the British ground troops were professionally trained, unlike the Argentine forces who were mostly poorly trained conscripts. The British Army Unit 2 Para, supported by the Royal Artillery, attacked Argentine forces at Goose Green. The Argentine forces were on the ridge, which was an advantage against the British. Later, 2 companies of British soldiers were sent to flank the Argentines. It was successful, and then the Argentine forces were encircled and stuck in Goose Green. The British commander then sent an ultimatum to the Argentine forces to surrender, and that's what they did. And 961 Argentine troops were taken as prisoner by the British forces. By the 1st of June, 5,000 more British troops arrived in the Falklands, and an all-out offensive was planned by Britain. It was divided into stages. First was the attack on Argentine forces in Mount Longdon, and second was the same attack but on Mount Tumbledown. The supplies for this offensive was to be brought by the Royal Fleet Auxiliary, but it was spotted and sank by the Argentine Air Force. Regardless of this, the offensive started and all the mounts were taken by the British ground troops, and the road to Stanley was open. The British recaptured Stanley from Argentine control and a ceasefire was called, ending the Falklands War. After 2 months of occupation by Argentina, the Falklands were regained by Britain. The British public and Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher were delighted at the news of the British regaining of the Falklands, and one of the factors why Margaret Thatcher won a landslide against Labour in 1933 was because of her strong leadership in the Falklands War. And the Falkland War gave back Britain its proud sense of empire. Whilst in Argentina, the public were furious at the news and blamed the military government. The government was overthrown and replaced by a democratic government in 1983. In 2013, a referendum was held in the Falklands, asking if the people would still want to be British overseas territory, and the people of the Falklands Islands voted to still stay British overseas territory with a 99% approval, but the Argentines still claimed the Falklands. Thanks for watching my analysis of this very important topic of the Falkland Wars. Thanks for watching and see you later.